Evening, everyone. No,
That's
okay.
great.
Rather be safe than sorry. Hmm. Never. Yep. Ready? Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. We want to welcome you this evening here to our special meeting of the South Euclid-Lyndhurst Board of Education, our work session this evening. It is now 5:42. We apologize for the delay. Technology isn't always your friend, but we're here now. Thank you for joining us. May we get a roll call, Mr. Hill?
Ms. Falkenberg? Here. Mrs. Jones?
Here.
Ms. King?
Here.
Ms. Lee?
Here.
Mrs. Ryan?
Mrs. Ryan is on an excused absence, so we will not have her this evening. Okay. We can go right into item 2.1, Dr. Reed.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We're here this evening to give a update with our strategic planning process. And so this evening, I think I've mentioned that we did a survey to kick it off, and we're going to talk a little bit about the process. But we have a guest here this evening who is going to give us an overview, and it's Mr. Steve Harris. We've worked with him before, but if for some of you that are not familiar with Mr. Harris, again, let's give a welcome to Mr. Harris, and he'll tell us a little bit about himself and the process.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. It's great to see some familiar faces and also some new ones, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend a little bit of time this evening with you. I hope that by the end of the evening that everybody walks away with a really clear understanding of the process that's being used for strategic planning, as well as some kind of intriguing exposure to the data that we've collected through the survey. So before we get into the details, I am not an ARC, but I'm the second best thing to an ARC. So does anybody have an idea what that might be? I'm married to an ARC.
Oh, that's right.
There you go. So 38 years.
Is that something?
She's jealous. She almost came with me, and I said, nah, you can watch me on YouTube. All right.
Say hi to her.
Hi, Maureen. If you're watching now. So, again, thank you for having me here. A little bit about myself. So I came out of jobs in big companies about, 13 years ago, and decided I wanted to take some of those concepts that I had learned and bring them to life in other environments. And so I work with organizations that are small, medium-sized. Typically, they're nonprofits or family-owned businesses, privately held businesses, and I basically just help them chart the path forward and figure out the best way to get there. I like working in a very hands-on manner in this situation. It's awesome to work with the team. They haven't really had a lot of me in the strategic planning space yet, but after the data has been reviewed and analyzed, that's when we kick into gear. You'll see that here in just a second. Before I go any further, for those of you that are here that completed the survey, and those that might be watching that completed the survey, thank you, because it's an opportunity for us to listen, which is really, really important, and to roll that what we heard into the process and make sure that we're making the best decisions for the district. So I'm going to go pretty quickly here, and you guys should feel free to stop me and ask me any questions. So let me see if we got technology working this way. There we go. All right, so a little bit about the strategic planning process. I like to think about a strategic plan as something that tells a story. And so if you kind of step back and you say, oh my goodness, we've got a vision statement, we've got a mission statement, some organizations have a purpose, or we've got beliefs, or we got values, it's a lot. And it's really hard to make sure it all hangs together. So we want to make sure as we move through this process that each of the pieces builds on the ones before it. So I thought it might be good to just put up here what it's going to look like when we're all done. Now, some of this terminology is going to be familiar to you. Some of it's going to be different. Some of it's going to be just different words for very similar things that you've seen in a strategic plan in the past. But, and also, we're not tackling everything, right? So you guys have a vision that you really like, and there's a good reason you like it. It's good vision. So we're not messing with the vision. The mission statement is out of scope as well. It's still relevant. It's still tied to the vision and the rest of the strategic plan. The values are something that you may not have seen a lot of. I think maybe the board's been exposed to that just a little bit. Really cool approach being taken here is that Cabinet created the values, but basically kind of said, wouldn't it be great to live them for a little while and just make sure that they're the right things for us and that they're doing what we want them to do for us. So currently in draft form reflects the fact that they may get tweaked a little bit as we move through this process, but that's an effort that's kind of being done in tandem to the creation of the strategic plan. And then we get to the strategic plan itself. And the pieces that you'll hear us talk about as we move through this process are that we'll have a small number of strategic pillars. Sometimes they're called strategic areas of focus. Sometimes they're called goals. I think they were goals in the plan that the Destination 2023 plan that you guys are replacing. But the strategic pillars will basically be these big, broad areas of items that we want to tackle. And then each strategic pillar will have an objective statement. So what is the desired outcome as it relates to this particular area of focus? And then, so if you think about that, I was hoping to give you an example. So I'm gonna try it, and I hope this resonates with you. But if you think about, like me, let's just say that I was doing strategic planning for me. And I might choose an objective. I might choose a pillar that's strategic planning. And my objective might be that I want to be the best strategic plan facilitator on the face of the earth. So that would be my objective. That's my ultimate accomplishment. But then the imperatives come into place when I ask myself, well, what has to be true for you to satisfy that objective? And I can think of at least three things. Well, so A, I have to have a great network or I wouldn't get strategic planning jobs. I have to be really good at facilitating. I probably have to be really good at understanding the education business. So, and there are probably more things, but that answers the question, if this objective is going to be true, what has to be in place to make that happen? So if those are my imperatives, then we get to the work that has to be done to get me there, right? So if I just focused on the imperative that I have to be a master facilitator, then some of the work that might go into that is that, you know, I have to go find a class or a coach. I have to take the curriculum. I have to learn. I have to practice. And out of that then comes the detailed steps in the action plan. So that's sort of the cascade, and that's the exposure to some of the terminology. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about a couple of pieces of this as we move forward. But before I go any further, any questions about what I've talked about so far? We good? Okay. Oh, I guess I have to do this. I'm going to do this every time, even though I don't have to point it at the screen. It's just human behavior. So talk a little bit about the phases of this project, and there are four. So we need to listen. We need to determine the direction. We need to build out the details of that direction, and then we have to implement. Okay, so seems pretty simple, right? I mean, that's common sense, common logic. As you can see, we're right in the middle of listening and determining the direction right now, and we're in the month of March, so this schedule would say that we're right on track. If you fast forward, we're going to ask for our target date for asking for formal approval for the strategic plan is the end of June. But you got to give us a little bit of grace because we're going to do a good job even if it takes another month to get there, but that's what we're thinking right now. Want to make sure that we talk a little bit more about the ability to get perspectives and build perspectives into this plan. So feedback from stakeholders, I guess, is a phrase that we could be using. We've already done a lot of that. You'll find out tonight in the survey we got 282 survey responses, so that's pretty awesome. But there's another opportunity here as well. What will happen after this is that I'll begin working with Cabinet, and we'll kind of craft the first few pieces of that strategic plan, right? So we'll craft the pillars and the objectives and start to build out the imperatives. At that point in the process, we're going to pause and we're going to get some feedback from stakeholders. So we'll construct some sessions that allow the community to come in and give us some perspective, and we'll fine tune it from there. And then we'll also use that feedback to figure out what the specific work that has to be done is to go into those imperatives. So end of April, beginning of May, again, we'll figure out the right time based on the progress that we make. But there'll be another opportunity to gather some feedback from stakeholders.
And the only thing I want to interject here, this really, we follow a similar, getting the board to approve it. What really helps for my team here is, we really will start our roadmap in year one of the strategic plan. Helps us to plan, what we're saying yes to, what we're saying no to, and really start the year off with our focus with moving forward. So puts a little pressure on ourselves. Trust me, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, but that's a timeline that I think is in the best interest of the work that we're going to be doing.
So can I ask a question? And I guess I'm kind of taking I guess I'm going to. So when you speak about you said 200? How many surveys you said?
282.
So when you think about that, I apologize if I'm going off topic, but when you think about that, is it worth it to strategically think about why we're not reaching a higher target number?
Well, I'll be honest, there's 4,000 data points in those 200-something surveys, so that's a pretty wide area. There's a couple of different ways. When you look at, we did it electronically, and so if you weren't a part of that, it was really kind of hard to reach those folks, if I'm answering the question.
Okay.
Because I think it's through the electronic, whatever stakeholders we had internally and externally, which included our mayors, our civic leaders, and so I think the people that answered it were strategic in the sense of people that do have input, both external and internal. So.
And I've never had really experience of seeing what other entities do. Is that a normal number with the percentage of students that we have? Or do we need to start strategizing on, are those paper surveys that we start issuing through buildings to home? I mean, is that even worth thinking?
I think we talked about paper, and I think in this day and age, you're not going to see too much come back to us. I think people want something that's convenient, something quick. I think what you also see when you put a survey out, sure, we could have kept it open for 6 weeks, but we would say that usually, probably within the first 4 days, we saw those folks that were going to answer the survey, and we did 3 reminders. And so you're going to get, usually, and Steve, I mean, you've dealt with usually anything beyond 2 weeks is you're going to get a trickle, one here, one there, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't do longer than that. So I don't know, I just want to feel comfortable with saying the people who answered are the people that really wanted to provide the input, and there is a percentage of people that are like, I'm just going to let the school district do their job and kind of keep it moving.
I think
Is
you're
that
always, I
fair
think,
to
yes,
say?
and what you're going to see is you're going to see a snapshot from staff members, parents and families, and actually we did it with our high school students.
Okay.
So that's the piece where when you see this, you're going to see, and folks from different cities, as well. So I think what I can say is just, it's a nice, maybe like a snapshot. Maybe
Okay.
you don't see the volume, but certainly the different types of stakeholder, I would say, is represented pretty
Okay.
good.
And I don't think it's a failure. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I'm not thinking that it's a failure. I mean, think about when you go out to have dinner. You get that survey and they can offer you $5 10 times, and if you don't want to fill it out, you don't want to fill it out.
Exactly. And you might be
So-
satisfied or
Okay.
unsatisfied. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, no problem.
No, thank you for asking the question. It's a good question. You should probably be asking that. So I've done this with similar sized districts, and this is on the low end. It's not the lowest. I've seen some that are higher. But what I've learned is to focus as much on the quality than the quantity. And we ask a bunch of questions here that you guys already touched on it, to make sure that we are getting students, make sure we're getting people from all the communities that SEL School serves. So if the results were different than what we have here, I might feel a little more concerned. But I feel like there is a very nice representation across the different types of stakeholders that we
Okay.
were looking for.
That
But
makes
you guys can judge that as we go through this.
Okay.
So, okay, any other questions or thoughts on this? All right. I did it again. All right, so a little bit about the survey. We asked 20 questions, and we required a lot, so some people might have bailed partway through, but we wanted to make sure that we got good responses, so we required 12 questions. Almost all of those things were just multiple choice. There was only one question where you had to type something in, and you could type A and move to the next question. You didn't have to type a novel. So I really don't think the design of the survey caused people to shy away. And I didn't really have a way to tell if somebody started and stopped. But I think we advertised that it should take in the neighborhood of 15 minutes to complete. And I think that was probably on the high side. You know, if you were really verbal and you answered all the optional questions. So 12 were required, 6 were optional, 2 were conditional. What do we mean by that? Well, what that means is if you answered you were a parent or guardian, you had another question you had to answer. So that other question was conditional. 282 people provided responses. The optional questions that we had generated from 56 to 107 responses, which I thought actually on a percentage basis, that was really high for optional questions. And as Linda mentioned, that all adds up to over 4,000 data points. Survey was open for 2 weeks. Linda's admin assistant is amazing, and
Yes,
she
it
sent me, you guys, so I'm on TV, I guess I could say. So Lisa's amazing, and when she sent me the email, which she knows she would have done right away, saying it's out there, by the time I went in and looked, there were like 50 responses already. So yeah, people respond fast, and then you don't get a lot toward the tail end of the window. So here we go. Without further ado, first question we asked was age. Can you guys see this? Okay. Okay. You can see the numbers and everything, percentages. Okay. So I won't have to read it to you, but you could see that over half the folks were between 35 and 54. No big surprise there, right? I mean, that's a pretty common age for parents and children in the district. And I'm just going to keep going, so you guys tell me. All right. Next question. What's your city of residence? And Josh, I think you told me that you thought this was fairly representative of the student population in the district. So that's kind of one quality check, right, is make sure that we're aligned there. You can see a little bit of Richmond Heights. You might wonder, well, why would 22% be outside of the district? Those are employees, mostly, right? So, okay. Next question, how long have you lived in the district? And as you can see, it's a pretty nice distribution. We've got some folks that haven't been here very long, and some folks that have been here for quite a while. I look at this as kind of a proxy for how informed someone might be. All right, if you had 90% of your people that haven't been here for 5 years, that might be a little different story. But you got a nice blend here. Are you an employee in the district? You can see we got some great representation from employees. There were 92 responses from employees. Okay. Are you a student in the district? or parent of a student in the district. And you can see here that we had 154 parents, guardians, and 44 students respond, and the rest weren't.
Is that 55%? It's right on the line. Yeah. Okay, yes, okay, thank you.
55%. All right, one of the conditional questions, if you said you were a parent or guardian, then which schools do your students attend? So if you did the math, the numbers add up to more than responses because some people have more than one student, right, and different schools. So I think my take on this is, again, it's a pretty nice spread, a pretty nice distribution. It looks like the Sunview number might be a little higher than kind of the student population. So, which isn't good or bad, just an observation, right? Okay, I'm gonna skip that one here. All right, now we get into the hard questions. So, we'd like to get a handle on just the general mindset of what the community expects in terms of how kind of grounded or out there they would like to see the strategic plan. And you can see here that you may not be able to read what the responses were, but 27% of the people said that we should aim for the stars, and we paraphrased that in the survey to mean that we'd be ambitious in every area. The middle option was aim for the stars, but keep one foot on the ground, right? So we want to be ambitious in the right places, but not a plan that somebody looks at and says, you guys are wild. Okay, and then the third option was keep both feet on the ground, so kind of an ultra-conservative. So as you can see, the bulk of the people were in that middle option. Not a big surprise, but the 5% slice to just stay, that was a little bit of a surprise. I would have thought that would have been a little bit higher, but it tells you that folks have expectations to be doing new things and different things and being progressive and so forth without going over the edge.
I'd be curious to see how much of that 5% is probably people who no longer have kids in the district and maybe they were in a good place when they graduated. So
could
their
be.
definition is, my kids made it through and it was great, maintained.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
could be. Right.
That would be that's probably
Sure.
where that
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yep,
Any other thoughts or questions?
that's a good point.
Oh, there are some select places here too where I looked at the communities compared to each other and how they responded.
Okay.
And I will, spoiler alert, is that you're not going to see that much difference. And I think that might be a surprise to you guys.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know, right?
He told me that, yeah, he's.
I mean, I'll share some nuance differences, but they're really pretty minor. And the way I looked at it is that if you had four options in your choices, and I just kind of divided the top two from the bottom two and said this is more of a positive, this is more of a negative, and then looked at those combined percentages. And generally speaking, South Euclid and Lyndhurst, at least where we had the most responses, responded very similarly. Now there were cases where within the positives, the Lyndhurst folks had more of the higher rating within the positive, and then there were other times when the South, but at the end of the day, if you just kind of divided to positive and negative, there really wasn't that much difference. So, which I think is very interesting. In this case, South Euclid was a little bit more aggressive by about 7% in terms of, which again, I'm not sure if you guys would have thought that. I don't know what you would have thought, but
In terms of aiming for the stars.
yeah. More stars, want more stars. Okay, then we asked another really hard question. What's your level of agreement to the statement that SEL schools meets the needs of my community? So you can see here that they had 4 options, and the way these pie charts work is that the most positive option always starts at 12 o'clock and it works its way around, okay, if you're having trouble seeing the details. So the strongly agree group, number 12%, and The agree group was 58, and then the other two combined were 30%. Okay. Yeah, and from a community breakout standpoint, Lyndhurst and South Euclid were really, really close, right around that 70% from the top two positive ratings. Richmond Heights was a little less positive, just a little. Okay, we good on that one?
Yes.
All right, now we asked another level of agreement question, but the statement we were asking about this time was that all graduates of SEL schools are prepared for a successful future. Okay, pretty good question, don't you think? Yeah. So you can see here that 7% gave the highest rating, and then on around the wheel to the 6% slice that were at the bottom. So 55% in the second highest rating. If you look at community breakout for the two positives compared to the two or lower, Richmond was the most positive. Richmond Heights was the most positive at 71%. And then the other group, remember we had another group, was at 65%. Now I'm not sure what they meant by their community, but and then Lyndhurst and South Euclid both around 61%.
This one couldn't be factored in regards to the student and parent population, or that one?
Could be the staff maybe too.
Well, okay, so I'm glad you asked. These breakouts I'm giving you are like hot off the press, and I've got more to do. So
We
when
gave them a lot more tasks.
yeah, when I met with Cabinet, they asked some
We
great
went
questions
to
about,
drill
well, I
down.
wonder what this group thought, I wonder, and you know, that's a really manual process that I'm gonna do for them. We're together next week in our first kind of full planning session, so I'll share some of the breakouts with them.
And when you
as well.
say that, you mean like, you will be able to see if someone answered this and it was strongly disagree, you can track back to where to see, are they a parent?
Yes,
Okay, that
I don't know who they are.
Right,
Yeah.
not who they are, but you
Totally
know that
confidential.
they might have
Different
said
stakeholders.
But I can tell that-
no because they've never experienced an SEL graduate. Maybe their kids are kindergarten, maybe they don't have any children.
Right,
Okay,
So you can track the survey.
okay,
yeah, I could track by the characteristics based on those early questions.
okay.
stop
we
asking
That's
questions.
understandable.
Go
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, we actually, and that's, no, that's really great, because we heard it for the first time, and, at this level, we said, hey, we'd like to really see this question, it broke out of different ways, and so I appreciate Steve it is hot off the press, because my team hasn't heard it yet, and so we are gonna keep looking at that, because sometimes, you're right, to that viewpoint, if a lot of the students are asking this way, one way or the other, that's great, or maybe not so great, you know what I mean? So, yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
that you thought about it that way.
yeah.
Thank you.
you guys ask really good questions. All right, so this is the one open-ended question that we made people answer. And again, they could type in one letter and hit and go to the next if they wanted to. But we got some really good information. So describe your vision for the type of graduates that SEL schools should develop. And what you see here is basically an order of emphasis. So said differently, the top item that each student has a plan was the most frequently mentioned item in here. Now, you can see 3 bullets under that the way they expressed that was sort of different. And there was a group that expressed it as, they should have a plan to either do post-secondary or military or workforce. There was another group that said, really, it's all about education, whether it's higher education or vocational trade. And there was another group that said, work, career, I don't care, they gotta have a plan.
Parents of high schoolers.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's, Catherine, it's really interesting that there was just a tone of practicality weaved through the open-ended questions. They weren't, and I'm gonna steal my own thunder, you didn't hear things like, we should be grooming people to be the next presidents of the United States. We should be focused on technology skills. We should be focused on, all that stuff was sort of important, but it was really more about life skills and having a game plan and being enabled to be successful regardless of what that plan is.
I think one of the things too we look at, what we hope to get out of this as well is, we want to develop our portrait of a graduate. And I think that's some of the things is what we see, and, you know, and it can be a number of these different things. So actually, even through the strategic planning process, that's one of the things that is a goal of the team is really, you know, what is the portrait of a graduate from the SEL schools? And really what that gets down to, even the moment that you're in kindergarten, you know, to third grade, to junior high, what does that really mean as we march our students towards graduation and that?
So if we keep moving down through here, you'll see the second bucket was around life skills. We want our graduates to be good citizens, want them to be well-rounded, culturally competent, and then there's just this whole bucket of what I call personal endearing characteristics, right? We just want them to be accepting and good people and so forth. Okay? Also, the next question before I pull up the pie chart is how well aligned between the current focus of the district and what you just said your vision was. Okay, so there you go. 12%, the highest, are very aligned, and 56% somewhat aligned. Again, this is a question, there wasn't a lot of difference across communities.
No.
Okay, next comes the money slide. You guys probably know what that is because I've referred to that before. So we asked the question, what areas of focus do you think the strategic plan should address? And we gave them, I think there's 17 options up here, and said you can choose 5 or fewer. Almost everybody chose 5. Some people bashed us for not giving them the opportunity to choose more than 5. Some people said 5 is too many. So, but regardless, we got good data. So I really, I'd like to spend a little bit of time parked on this slide because I think this is a really important one. And as we think about the next stage of this process, it's creating those pillars, right? Those really 3 to 5 really big buckets of strategic focus that we want to build the plan around. So,
Get your printout.
She take
Take a picture. We will get you a printout.
It's okay. You know what?
Every 15 minutes to get a picture.
Oh, it's okay. I'm glad this is an important slide, so I
Yeah,
agree
very.
with it. No problem. We'll provide. That's cute.
Thank you. No problem. I'm the technology expert.
I can tell. I can tell that.
toot your own horn, huh?
Don't say it, mister.
She is? Okay.
Thank you, Catherine.
Can you guys see the words that are up
Yes.
there? Okay, great. So you can see at the top, college and career readiness was chosen by about 2/3 of folks. Now, again, they got five choices, right? So 2/3 of them had that as one of their 5. Academic achievement was another one. It was right up there. So those two things were 1, 2. And then you can see there's a bit of a drop off, but it's a pretty steady cascade from there. Catherine?
How did you differentiate between college and career readiness and academic achievement? Or was this just how it was presented?
These are the
These words.
precise options they
Okay.
had. Yeah, I
Interesting.
didn't butcher this one with my interpretation.
Yeah.
This is what was presented to them.
Right, thank you.
And then if you go, well, I'm just going to stop. What questions do you have? What jumps out at you? Whether it's like, yeah, I'm not surprised by that, or am surprised by that. Cassandra.
So it's interesting because I think people are creatures of habit. And when you look at the top things, there are things that we're dealing with in society today. Coming off of COVID,
Yeah.
kids not going to college, kids not being prepared, families welcoming adult children back home, the status of public school education today, the well-being of students, mentally, emotionally, physically, the safety and security in general, the social responsibility. It's just appalling that as we answered these questions, and I recall when I answered them, the state of the world is reflected in the top tier. And that's interesting, because if it had have been 5, 10 years ago, some of that stuff would have been flipped. Facilities and athletics would have been at the top because people were more safe overall, so the kids spent a lot more time away from home. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, we discussed that too, the timing of it all.
Yeah.
Because we even said, like, if it would have been a levy cycle time period, fiscal management would have been higher. Yeah.
It's appalling that humans are creatures of habit, and you allow everything that you go through in your component of life to impact the decisions you make at that moment. And that's very interesting.
And we looked at it, we were kind of surprised in a sense, and we don't really know if it means this, but we thought, okay, when you look at technology, 20%, I mean, how could that not be a priority? However, if you really look at what we've done with the last 2 strategic plans, we have interactive whiteboards, and we're going through our second cycle of other technology in every classroom. When I got here in 2012, the only way you had technology is if you wrote a legacy grant. And so we also went to a 1-to-1. So we don't know how to interpret that, but it could be that the fact that we feel maybe they felt they were well on our way, and that was not necessarily, it's already been addressed. Or maybe when you look at facilities, let's think about what we've done in the last, since 2018 with regards to upgrading our facilities. We continue. And then Josh chimed in about fiscal management. Well, you know, we're all good. And then, you know, we're trying to think of the positive, but we don't know because, you know, we were on an 8-year levies. We were on a 3 to 4 year levy cycles before I got here. And now we were 8 years for the last one, from 2012 to 2020. And we hope to be another 7 years. So we don't know. I guess there's a few ways. And that's how we were a little bit surprised as well.
I mean, that's shocking to me. Even with technology, that's not appalling to me at 20%.
Yeah.
I mean, you have kindergartners now with cell phones. So when you think
They
about
don't
a
think of it as a
family,
priority.
I don't need you to strategically teach my kids how to embrace technology. We've got that covered.
But if you think about it,
Now,
five
help me
to
with
10
safety and security.
5 to 10 years ago, though, that was the hot
That would
button.
have been at the top.
Yeah,
Now
every-
help me with the safety and security of this technology.
Right.
Yes.
Riding through the hallways, videotaping. So it's
AI.
very interesting. That's very interesting.
Yes.
I would encourage you to make sure we stay grounded in the question itself, right? So don't view this as a report card for the district.
Yeah, right.
Because I may be thinking about it more than people that responded, but the question was about the strategic
What you
plan going
focus on.
forward. So it's more of a gap question, I think.
And I think our community is aware of what a strategic plan is versus if this would have been a first survey, no one knows. Oh, I think the strategic plan should help me how to get my kids home after school. So I think the community has a clear representation of what a strategic plan is
Can
to
do.
offer them. So I think that is helpful as well.
Yeah.
It's not like we're steering them in to try to educate them what a strategic plan is.
It's a great point.
We found it interesting. The team did too. But as Mr. Harris says, it's like, take it for what it is. It is timing, yeah.
I did do one special cut for this, because I wanted to see how employees' answers compared to the larger group.
Oh, there you go.
And I don't have a lot to report. I mean, they might be ordered one-off here and there. The only significant difference is that there was a greater emphasis on school climate from employees, and sort of the trade-off piece was student well-being. So if you flip those two on this, you'd kind of have what the employees said. But, I mean, if you look at where those things are, that's really not even that big of a swap, and they're really closely related
That's
as
self-explanatory.
well, right? So,
I mean, it is. It's just
okay. Anything else here?
It's good.
Good information.
It is good.
Good. Okay, this is it. This is the last slide. So just sort of taking all this in and reading through the 4,000 data points, and I do have a way that I analyze this stuff. It's not just on a whim. I just wanted to kind of share some really high-level directional things, and most of this is based on the open-ended questions that they answered. So on the positive side, a lot of praise for staff, and it wasn't just coming from employees. There was praise from staff. And just kind of an overarching theme from a lot of folks that there's tremendous amount of opportunity in this district, and especially if you kind of latch on to it. You know, so those were really positive items. The nature of survey is that you're going to hear more about what needs to be done than praise. And in all honesty, we didn't ask the questions in a way where we were seeking praise. So the gaps list is a little bit longer, but I do think it would be good to walk down through those. So and these aren't really in order of importance, but they do kind of bundle together to some degree. So the first item here is handling disruptive and or threatening student behavior. Absolutely a theme throughout. And you know, when on the prior page we saw safety and security, it was interesting to me. Safety and security was high, facilities were low. In the open-ended questions where people could type what they were thinking, the safety concerns they expressed weren't about making the facilities safer. They were related to student behavior and feeling safe in the school. Right? But then if you go back to the disruptive behavior component, there were two pieces to that. One was the safety piece, and the other was just my kid can't learn everything that my kid needs to learn when the disruptive behavior disrupts their education. So I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know. I found it fascinating, though, that the safety issues really weren't about the facilities at all. So you guys have done a lot of work in that space, I know. Imbalance between academics, arts, and athletics. So a general feeling that athletics is emphasized more, and that music and arts should be emphasized more. Again, you guys have to take all this feedback, right, and balance it out with other things you know, other feedback that you have. So I don't think we're saying this is so. I'm just telling you what was said, right? And well, I'll just leave it at that. And then next item was student flight to other non-South Euclid Lyndhurst schools. Speaks for itself. Teaching life skills was a very common theme, and it focused on readiness for alternatives to college. Now, the last three I would sort of group together and say that the broader theme there is we just need to work together, right? So whether that means more accountability, more communication, more collaboration, just keep trying, right? I'm sure you guys try that every day, but just keep trying. And then I mentioned before, notably absent was the teaching technology skills, and you said it better than I did, Cassandra. And then developing 21st century skills. That used to be the buzzword. So there you have it. That's kind of all that I had to share with you, but happy to talk more. If you guys have any questions or observations that you'd like to share.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Is that okay? I have a question on this gap cited.
Mm-hmm.
Were students and parents noticing some of these things, or was this mostly staff?
Oh, this wouldn't
was
be
across
mostly
the
staff. I mean, it would be across the board.
Yeah, okay.
These things, there was too much for it to just be coming
Okay.
from employees.
Right.
Good question.
Yeah, we this is my second time seeing this. I mean, I think we've got a lot to work with, actually. Some really, even the drilling down what Mr. Harris presented this evening, that sometimes perception is one city thinks one thing and the other, but as we're seeing in some cases, not necessarily that's the case. Which but also I think looking at what students think, and definitely that's an important piece too. So we are. I think it's a great start. We're really looking forward to getting this done, and it will be presented to the board in June. But we got a lot of work between now and then.
I like how I can see the transition. We weren't here first, so you just got to ride the wave. I can see the transition of the first go round and how we were so, what do we put on here? What are we trying to target? Oh my gosh, we need this, we need that. And now you can see the ease of looking back where we came from, what we've serviced, what we've accomplished, what we didn't meet the benchmarks on, and now we're
And
here.
what we're continuing. Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's enlightening.
Yeah, I was part of it, by the way.
No, not you. I'm talking to Ashley. You're not Googling everything.
I just remember sitting in meetings.
No, it's her.
I knew she wasn't talking to you.
So that is very
Yeah.
enlightening. I mean,
Oh, and I think,
Yeah.
I don't know who else was maybe a part of the first one, Melissa and everything. I mean, we did the first one in 2013, it was Destination 2018. 2018 was exciting, and little did we know that, a short 2 years later, COVID would hit, and so it kind of, the RRR plan came out, and we had to focus on certain things that were immediate. I think what's exciting about this strategic plan is I really feel like, again, it's another roadmap for us. We've checked off a lot of boxes, and, how do we continue to get our students' future ready for whatever they choose to be, whether it's, the military, career, college, or whatever that is. So, yeah, we're looking forward to next few months. I know I'm one of the usual people that get excited about strategic plans, so.
Well, if you're gonna take a trip, you wanna know where you're gonna go,
Exactly.
exactly where you're gonna go.
Yeah.
You want the map.
Well, I think what people need to understand too, what it does is it has a focus, where even when I look at Josh, when we talk about budgets, we know if we're gonna be focusing on these areas in year one, the strategic plan, it really helps the team build the budgets, because you need to align the budgets with what you're trying to accomplish, otherwise, it's just an idea. So I think that's the piece where I think it also helps us to be very efficient with our dollars and really knowing what to say yes to, what to say no to based on what outcomes we want to achieve. So that's why I get, kind of excited with regards to having that roadmap. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's, as we've been going through this process and we're currently in budget season, I find myself tying it back to, okay, well, I see it heading this direction, I see, and looking and saying like, okay, is that accounted for within their budget? Is there anything that's sticking out that is not aligned?
Right.
So, absolutely.
Other than that, that's all I think we have for this evening, and I don't know if you have any more questions for.
you have any questions for us?
I'm just gonna thank you for being engaged through this. I was a little worried it would just be a spewing, but I appreciate the
Yeah.
questions you asked.
And you don't have to reveal, but have you worked with another school district recently?
It's been a few years.
It's been a few years.
Yeah, I mean, so the long story of me is that I did this, and then I went in-house with a client and worked for a few years back in the corporate arena
Okay.
and spun back out a couple years ago, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I could,
Well, I think the last one we talked about
Revere,
too is, you're
Fairview.
familiar with the first ring.
first ring.
He actually, Steve helped us with the 16 school districts, our first ring strategic plan, with that piece, and you said Fairview Park was another one that we.
Fairview, Revere, there were a couple others.
Yeah.
Do you need some, why did you ask?
No, I mean, I was just wondering if you
If
had
that
another,
was similar is what I think.
no, if you had another district that you can kind of, without revealing them, just kind of aligning us kind of beside them, like where we are. I mean, because you hear it every day. We're out here, we hear people complain, but yet we hear people praise us. And like, we know we're not horrible, but we're not the best either. So I was just curious.
Okay,
Because I
well-
know some people have problems, and then some people have problems. And we have problems. We don't have problems.
Yeah, okay.
And I will tell that to anybody, and I stand on that. I don't care how many bad complaints come. I will always stand on that premise. You want to see problems? Let me take you to some places. So I just wanted to kind of see.
Yes, so I have worked with districts that have problems. So I know what you're talking about. But so here are my observations about where you guys are, if this is helpful. So you feel very much like a district and a leadership team that's been through this before. I said at the beginning that the strategic plan done right needs to feel like a story is being told.
Okay.
You guys have actually figured out how to link multiple strategic plans together to be an even bigger story. And so, and some of that's continuity leadership. I mean, both of you have been in your roles for quite a while, right? So you don't get a lot of the back and forth because we've got a new superintendent or we've got a new board president. So it feels very much like a group that's been through this and done that before. Now, I would give you double bonus points for creating the RRR plan, which I affectionately call your pirate plan, during COVID, because you realized that what we had built is just not relevant,
Yeah.
given the circumstances.
Right.
Right, so I think you guys have it going on. But, you know, the other thing is every district they are where they are.
Right.
I mean, you can do the best, and everybody I've ever worked with always has the best interest of the students and the community in mind. I've never questioned that.
Yeah.
The board gets along, apparently. I mean, it looks like you guys get along pretty well. That's really important as well.
I can tell you, I've been through 2, maybe 3 of these with other districts. This is the most focused of one that I've been through, and you're doing it with the mindset of it's gonna be put to use. Whereas the other ones, it felt more like they were doing it because they had to do it. There had to be some kind of a plan in place, but they didn't necessarily stick to it. So it's the usefulness and the focus, and that's why I think the timeline is even perfect for it, because it's so focused that if you put any more time in it, the second you make it, it's almost outdated.
Yeah.
So the longer you spend making it, I mean, you're gonna
Less
keep redoing it.
productive it's
Yeah.
gonna be.
Right.
I mean, that's a good breath to have and to feel. Like I said, I've been here 13 years. I don't sit here because it's lucrative. I don't sit here because it's a salary that's paying me 6 figures. That's not my nature of work. That's what they're here for. That's what they do. I'm here to help my community. I'm here to advocate for kids. And I stay here this long because when my bad days are bad, they're bad. When my good days are good, they're good. And I like riding down the middle a little bit, and I do enjoy what I do, so. that's
Yeah,
good.
I would just share a couple more things that maybe watch out for. If you remember this slide, we didn't talk a lot about the action plan, but you can have the best strategic plan in the world. If you don't have an action plan that's gonna bring it to life,
No, that's the work.
and so that's the word. I mean, if you look at
Yeah.
this slide, I mean, look at that, implementation is June through September.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's kind of intense stuff. The other thing that I would kind of watch out for is that we're definitely, take COVID out of the mix, that was just such an aberration. We hope we never see something like that again. Even without COVID, the cycle of change is so fast. Now the world changes so fast, and you guys are living in the world. You don't get to define the world, right? So it's changing so fast, and it gets really hard to plan too far ahead.
But you see it though, and that's the joy I know I feel sitting here, is that we accept that change.
Yeah.
There's so many, I like to tell people there's so many dynamics that we can't control. You've got the federal government here and you've got the local government here, and we're smashed in the middle. We could easily spill out over the sides and head back to the house and be done with this. But we decide to stay in that middle and keep massaging it, and every time we think we get somewhere, there's some other thing that is coming to try to knock us off the map. So I appreciate that, because we change
Yeah.
like this. And sometimes you're on the train holding on and you look up and the train has left you. But I'm still holding on, and then I'm trying to catch up with the train, and by the time I get to the train, what I left on the train when the train left me is no longer there. But I don't get to stand before people and say, oh, my contents aren't there anymore. What am I gonna do? I have to keep moving, and we have to keep making sure we service the entire child.
Right.
And I'm sure you know, you've seen public education is coming. They're coming for us. People wanna run public education that don't know how to run public education, and we still have to sit here and do what we have to do. And those who want to try to run public education are making way more than the 5 of us are making, but we're still here.
My money's on you.
That's exactly.
So, I appreciate
Well, thank
that.
you for the time. I really appreciate the engagement.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and we look forward to our next meeting together, which we all have on our calendars here. So I think we're in a good spot. We wanted to present to you, and we'll continue to give the board update, and you'll, as you can see from the timeline, we know where we're at right now, so we'll get there. Okay, so thank you. And I actually just had one thing this evening, because I wanted to give our full attention to the strategic plan, so I do not, Madam President, I do not have anything else for this evening.
We don't have a need for executive session at all. No. And it is 6:35. May we get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
May we get a roll call, Mr. Hill?
Ms. Lee?
Aye.
Ms. King?
Aye.
Ms. Falkenberg?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye. Aye. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know I'm probably out of line, but I just want to say to those that are watching and those that do watch in the future, this school district is here to service you and your families. We're here to service the children. We're here to service the entire child. We do this every single day when we walk forward, and we do it. So things like this are not a joke. We walk with the intentions of making sure our children are prepared. So with that being said, I will just say today, you could be standing next to someone who is trying their best not to fall apart. So whatever you do today, do it with kindness. And we will continue to service your families and these children with the same kindness that we elicit from you all. Thank you. Have a good evening. Like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.